All right. So, I'm gonna start off by having you state your name just for the record.
Eddie Spatz,
Okay. And where were you born?
Chehalis, Washington,
Okay. What year were you born?
1950.
Okay. Um, how many siblings do you have?
I have a sister and a brother, and one brother that passed away years ago.
Okay. Um, what did your parents do for a living?
Well, my mother didn't do a lot when I was growing up. I mean, she didn't do anything outside the home until maybe I was 17 or something like that, and then she went to work as a office worker in a doctor's office.
Oh, okay. And what'd your dad
And my
do?
dad, he was on the railroad for 30 years. He works in depots doing paperwork and counting the number of cars in the yard, railroad cars, things like that.
Okay. Um, when did you join the military?
1970.
Um, did any of your parents serve in the military?
My father served. He was in the Navy.
Oh, okay. Did your father serving in the military have anything or have any influence on you going into the military?
I think so, yeah. It was something like, well, my father went in the Navy, so I'm going to go in the Navy. But more influential than that was the fact that during that time people were being drafted into the military. So I decided to go into the Navy instead of the Army. I didn't really feel comfortable with that or the Marines. I thought maybe I'd just follow my dad's footsteps.
Okay. Um, was there a a war going on when you joined?
Yeah, the Vietnam War.
Okay. What was your time of serving? How long did you serve for?
4 years.
So 1970 to 1974 or 75?
74.
Okay. Um, how old were you when you joined the military?
20.
Okay. Um, did you know of any like social movements going on at the time, like maybe like something like the Black Panthers or women's rights movement or any
Yeah.
movements with Native Americans or just any movements that you may have heard of on the radio or
Yeah.
anything?
Yeah.
Okay,
The
which
radio, the television. Yeah.
what movements were those?
Well, there was the Black Panthers, as you mentioned, and there was peace movements out there. A lot of people protesting the war. I'm not sure exactly when the women's rights movement started, but that was probably during the same time, and I was aware of that. Um, I can't think of any other specifics, but there was I think that was SDS was a student movement against the war. And then there was a couple of really ultra radical things going on. There was Red Army, and there was some other things that were more violent. The other ones we mentioned were more or less peaceful. Black Panthers carried guns, but they didn't really involve themselves in shooting or anything. And then there was, well, that was a little bit before that, but there was the NAACP. What else was going on? There was people against nuclear weapons, and there was people against this and that, and I don't remember all the names now.
Oh, okay. Um, did you hear of anything to have to do with civil rights or anything of that sorts too?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's why I mentioned the NAACP, because that was, Dr. Martin Luther King, during that time was very instrumental in pushing for civil rights for the African American community.
Was the town you grew up in Washington, was it kind of diverse, or was it all predominantly kind of like one race?
Mostly white, but there was a few Indians here and there.
Oh, okay. How was there kind of like any hostility between Native Americans and other people living there? Like any hostility between Native Americans and white people, perhaps?
No, not that I was aware of.
Okay.
It was fairly peaceful. Anyway, the time, I think I moved by then. When the civil rights movement started, I think I was in Port Orchard or Shelton, I've forgotten now, but somewhere in there. And there was a little tiny bit more minority in that area, but when I got to Bremerton, there was quite a few minorities. Bremerton was mainly a Navy town, and they had a shipyard too, so there was a lot more folks there in different groups of minorities.
Oh, okay.
But during the time that I was there, in any of those places, there was no racial strife that I was aware of.
Okay. You said you were 20 when you enlisted into the Navy?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you enlisted. You didn't get drafted, right?
Right.
Okay.
I enlisted so I wouldn't get drafted. It's kind of a paradoxical thing, but the Navy was different from the other services because they didn't get involved directly with the shooting more.
Right. Where were you living at before you joined the Navy?
I was living in, like I said, I think it was Shelton. Yeah, I'm sure it was Shelton.
Okay. And then, where were you stationed at during your time of service?
I had a few different places I was at. Started my boot camp training in San Diego, and then from there shipped overseas. Went on a ship, aircraft carrier, the USS Constellation.
Okay.
Hold on.
Did were there things kind of going on in the military?
Yeah, there was things going on, but I haven't told you all my duty stations yet.
Oh, okay.
I had to stop for a minute because Mama was asking me or telling me something. Anyway, then the ship went to various ports of call in the Pacific, so we went to, first we went to Hawaii, so that was still in the United States, and then we went to the Philippines, and that's the place where we would the aircraft carrier would go from the Philippines to off the coast of Vietnam, and we would do our thing over there. We'd have the aircraft flying over and fighting different, like sometimes they'd be fighting jets, and sometimes they'd be bombing, and different things that they do. And then after that, we went to Yokosuka, Japan, and then we went back to the coast, off the coast of Vietnam, and then we went from there to, Singapore. And then we went from there. We sailed to back to United States, back to, I think it was, San Diego. We were ported out of San Diego. And then had some problems, as you mentioned. There was things going on in the service, and the African American people on the ship thought that the captain was discriminatory, so they staged a sit-in on the mess decks, which is where we had our dinners, our lunches, etc. And then we went to, I got transferred after that happened. I went to Jacksonville, Florida, joined a group out there, another Navy thing, and then we went from Florida to we went to Sicily, and then I spent the rest of my service there until I was injured in a car accident. And then after about a month, I went back to the U.S. of A. And then I was discharged honorable.
Oh, okay. Did you have any involvement with that sit-in on that?
Yeah, I did. I was one of two white guys that was in with the African Americans, and it was kind of strange, strange experience, something completely out of my experience. So I just was. We started off on the mess decks, and then for a little while there was what they call the shore patrol, which is equivalent to Navy police. And then the shore patrol got relieved by Marines, and the shore patrol only had batons, and the Marines had M16s, and we had little, like, knives and forks stuck. So that's all we had. No, I guess you could do some damage with that. I don't know, but that was when the command took the ship back to port and told us to get off, and we sat on the deck outside the ship door where it was docked, and the TV crews and everything came by. It was a big deal for a few days, and then we were all transferred to different duty stations across the world, really, country at least.
Wow. Did you get in any trouble for that, or was it kind of like a don't ask, don't tell anymore, or?
Well, let's see. I was already about the lowest rank you could get, so they couldn't bust me, I didn't get fined or anything like that. We just, they just said, go over here and we'll forget about it. So, or not forget about it, but we'll not do anything to you. So that's what happened.
Okay. Who was kind of like president during that time of your service?
That was, I want to say Nixon. I think that was the one. I have to look it up.
Oh,
I
okay.
forgot.
That's fine.
Might have been Johnson.
Okay. Yeah, I believe it. I believe it was Johnson, but I'll look that up. I think it was Johnson first, and then it was Nixon. But
Yeah, I think so.
I'll look that up.
But, I was in from 70 to 74, and the war started before I got in. But I think Kennedy was president before I got in.
Oh, okay.
He's the one that kind of got us involved in that mess. We took it over from the French. That Vietnam was one of their colonies for a long time.
Did you have kind of like any political views going into the Navy or into the military that kind of maybe changed while you were in there? Or vice versa?
No, I had the same beliefs when I went in while I was in there, and after I got out, I was more or less pacifist and anti-war.
Okay. Was there a lot of other, other soldiers or other comrades that kind of felt anti-war as well, or?
Well, very few. No, there was most of the people that was in there that I was with. They liked the war. I don't know if like is the right word, but I think they believed it was the right thing to do.
Oh, okay. Did your parents kind of have an opinion on you going into the military?
Yeah, they suggested it.
Okay.
Yeah, when I left my parents' home, I was like, join the military, get a job, or stay in school. Well, I was getting bad grades in school, didn't get a job, so I joined the military.
Okay.
Because they weren't having me live in the house anymore.
Yeah.
I was getting too old, they said. Time for me to grow up and get some responsibilities. So, okay.
You mentioned kind of before about how there's a little bit of kind of hostility between whites and African American soldiers, but kind of like, did it increase kind of as the war went on, like the hostility between the two groups, or did it decrease, or was it kind of stagnant?
I don't know. After that incident that I was involved with, I never had any problems with race or stuff like that.
Okay.
So I can't say whether or not it went up, down, or in between, because my experience is my experience. Is not to say that the whole world was like going through something that I wasn't aware of or was aware of. I don't remember any of that.
Did you kind of like feel any pressure to kind of like during that time when you were talking about the sit-in? Did you feel any pressure to kind of like pick a side, like whether you were to side with the white soldiers over the African American soldiers?
Yeah, it was the beginning. The group was like, the people I was involved with, its leadership was like, things are going to get tough from here on out. You can go if you want to. You can stay, so I'll stay. So, pressure, I don't know, but that's the way it was.
And when you got out of the military...
Hold on a second.
Oh.
Hold
on. When you When did you get out of the military?
74.
Okay. Um, and what was going on during that time, kind of like in the United States?
Well, actually, the war was getting closer to the end. It ended in 75. So it was like people were still protesting, and a lot of people were showing their solidarity, I guess you could say, with other anti-war people who had their hair long and they wore somewhat faded clothes. It was it was something that you could tell somebody was in the peace movement because of the way they dressed and the way they were groomed.
Okay. Did you kind of?
But actually, what was the question?
I said, what kind of movements was going on during that time when you got out of the military?
Yeah, it was the same as when I went in.
Yeah. Now that you were out of the military, did you feel more inclined to kind of like join any kind of movements as you may have been restricted before when you were in the military?
No, I didn't really, but what happened was this. I went to work with my friend. Oh, that was after. Never mind. I basically hung out for the summer, and then I went into the Evergreen State College to get my degree. And it was, quote, a hippie college, unquote. A lot of peace people and people that wanted to get out of the war and stuff.
Okay.
So I joined a college that was like full of people, like-minded people.
Oh, okay. And where was this college at?
Hold on.
Okay.
She says we're going to make her phone go dead.
I said, where was the college located at that you went to?
In Olympia, Washington.
Okay. When you got out of the military, was it kind of hard for you to adjust to civilian life as opposed to being a soldier every day?
No, not really. I wasn't a soldier, I was a sailor.
Well, sailor, I'm sorry, sir.
But in any case, no, I don't think so. Because it was harder for me to adjust to the service than it was for me to readjust to civilian life.
I understand that. Let's see. Kind of like knowing what you know about the military, would you kind of suggest the military to any of your kids?
Well, I think I did. But my kid is different than me. He had different ideas. You still have different ideas and different viewpoints, so you can't really compare the two. But it's okay if that's what you want to do, to be in the military. It's not okay if you don't want to do it. I sure didn't want to do it. My mother says, no, you can't. Go ahead.
When like you said, like your political affiliation kind of like stayed the same. Did you kind of like side with one political party throughout, and which political party would that have been?
Yeah, well, Democratic was the Democratic Party. And I've been a lifelong Democrat. So they're more liberal. That's why.
Okay.
And conservative people and rich people like the Republican Party. I didn't have that much money ever. And I was liberal in a lot of my ideas.
Do you see kind of like any movements going on today that may have kind of reminded you of movements going on back then? When you were growing up?
No, I can't think of any really. There's a lot different then. There's the anti-nuclear people still, which is good. And then, other than that, no, I don't think so.
And who were the anti-nuclear people? Kind of like, were those the people against like nuclear bombing of other countries and stuff as a whole, or or did they just oppose of America using nuclear bombs?
No, I don't want anybody to have the bomb. You don't want the world to get blown up.
Right.
What else? I think maybe the environmentalists might be somewhat comparable to the peace movement in a way. I think the movement, the people of today got their tactics from that era that I was in.
I kind of want to go back to something you said earlier, just to kind of like get clarity. You mentioned the SDS, and how they were kind of like anti-war. You said, or what were they kind of standing?
They were anti-war. There was I forgot what SDS stands for now, but it was like Students Democratic something or other.
Okay. Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
For your time and letting me interview you.
Thank you, Mama, for using her phone.
One of the last questions is, do you kind of, or do you like talking about your military service, or do you like being asked about your military service, or is this something that you don't really like to talk about too much?
Well, I don't usually talk about it, but I don't mind if somebody asks me.
And is there any other kind of like information from that time that maybe I didn't ask you about that you want to like let me know about during this interview, or did we kind of touch on a lot of things that
I think we pretty much covered at least what you need to know, what you wanted to know. There's probably other things, but I can't do them right now.
That is okay. Well, thank you again, Pops, for your time.